Hello everyone, my name is Kyra, and for this week's discussion we had to choose a book that we thought would be appropriate for a book talk. I decided to go with a children's book, and it's very short, so I may end up reading it before the lesson, before I do my video. The book I chose was The Relatives Came, and it is a story by Cynthia Rylant, and it's illustrated by Stephen Gamble. This book also received the Caldecott Honor, and the pictures and everything is just really, really good, and it's a funny story. Like I'm 20 years old, and I laughed pretty much all the way through it. It was really cute. The book is appropriate for, I think, ages 4 to 7, and the Lexile reading level is AD 940 L. And The Relatives Came. It's a story about two families who visited one another during each summer. And unlike most families that come in, they stay the entire summer. And this time it was the family from Virginia was coming to stay with the other family, and it didn't really say, but from what I could gather and kind of understand, I kind of related them to like West Virginia. Maybe I'm wrong, but based on the pictures, I feel like people from West Virginia could relate to it. Just kind of like, it's kind of like an old timey look on their houses, and like how they dress, and like the aprons and the bandanas. I'm actually dressed as a character. I figured I probably should mention that. All through the book you see like the elderly women who I guess cooked the dinners and prepared the meals, prepared breakfast and all that. They wore the aprons and the bandanas. So I decided to dress like that, but there were several options throughout the whole family. I think there was about 30 different people I could have dressed as, but I figured I would keep it simple and not show you guys my bare feet and holes in my jeans and stuff like that. But there's a lot of that in this story. I thought this would be a really good book to do a lesson on with I would probably center it around kindergarten to first grade, because at that age students can relate to seeing their family members, and also at that age they kind of have a feeling like they're old enough to understand that family come in and they're still your family, but you don't see them as much as you would like your neighbors and stuff like that. And as a young kid, I had families that come in from Texas and North Carolina, and it was very hard for me to relate to them. The North Carolina, not so much, because I got to see them a lot. But my family that come in from Texas, that we was the same age, and it was just very hard for me to relate to my cousin and carry on a conversation. Like I have a bad accent myself, but her accent was a lot more extreme, I guess. And we would always nitpick at each other, and their stays was short. The family, they stayed like on a weekend. That was about it, and they went back home. But we didn't grow up together, so we didn't get to relate as much. So I think it's cool that these families spend the whole summer with the opposite family, and they take turns each year, which I think's a really cute idea, and kids would probably love that. And I would begin my lesson by talking about families, because at that age they're old enough to know like about their family that come in. And I know a lot of them probably going to say North Carolina, because that seems very common for people in my area. Their family's always in North Carolina, and they can relate to when they see them and what kind of adventures they go on, how long their family stay. Do they stay at their house or their nana's house? And they can just relate in that matter. Also, how the book shows like a diversity in the families. Even though it's the same family, they're very diverse. I feel like kids can relate to that. Just like I said, my cousin from Texas and I was very, very different, and I feel like they can relate to that. And once they actually sit down and think about it, I think it would be very interesting for them to see just how different or how much alike they are with their family members that's not from their state. And besides that, like I said, the book was very funny and interesting, and it could be a really good book for students to read. It helps them get an understanding of just like how they say they're from Virginia, and they compare the Virginian to their family. And maybe I didn't really realize a lot of different, but the student or the child telling the story, she nitpicked every little thing that was different about the family. But whenever it showed them together, they seemed like they was very much alike, and they seemed to have a good time together. But I would close the lesson with, like, kindergarten or first graders. I would close it by asking, what do you think they'll do on their next summer vacation? Like, which family do you think will visit the other family? And I would talk about what are some activities you think they would do, because I'm going to read the book to you all since I didn't take up too much time talking. I'm going to read the book to you all, and I think it would be a really good closing, and it keeps the students engaged. Like, they can think about that as they do, like, a simple task or a little assessment that I have lined out for them. It would be something good for them to keep them thinking and get them more involved in the reading as well. But I guess I've talked enough, so I'll begin. The relatives came. It was the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They left with their grapes, were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. And you can see the cars loaded down with suitcases. They're ready to stay the entire summer. They had an old station wagon that smelled like a real car, and in it they put an ice chest full of soda pop, and some boxes of crackers and some bologna sandwiches, and they came from Virginia. They left at 4 in the morning when it was still dark, before the birds were even awake. And you could see they was flying out of there. They knocked the mailbox over, and they was in a hurry to see their family. They drove all day long and into the night, and while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and the different mountains, and they thought about their almost purple grapes back home. They thought about Virginia, but they thought about us too, waiting for them. And you see they're starting to go through the mountains and stuff. So they drank up all their pop and ate up all their crackers and traveled up all those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. And here they are tearing the fence down, and there's the other family running out to them. And as you can see, they're dressed pretty relaxed. And they got the hose and the jeans, and the little boy, he's got one sock on and one sock off. I don't know if you can see it. Then it was hugging time. Talk about hugging. Those relatives just passed us around their car, pulling us against their wrinkled Virginia clothes, crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. Then it was into the house, and so much laughing and shining faces and hugging in the doorways. You'd have to go through at least 4 different hugs to get to the kitchen, to the front room. Those relatives. And finally, after a big supper 2 or 3 times around until we all got a turn at the table, there was a quiet talk, and we were in 2s and 3s throughout the house. And here one of the characters I dressed up as. You can see I think it's right there with the apron. The relatives weren't particular about beds, which was a good since there wasn't any extra. So a few squeezed in with us, and the rest slept on the floor, some with their arms thrown over the closest person, or some with an arm across one person and a leg across another. It was different going to sleep with all that new breathing in the house. They're crowded in the room. Those relatives stayed for weeks and weeks. They helped us tend to the garden, and they fixed any broken things that they can find. And as you can see, a lot of the kids are playing cowboys and Indians and playing with cars, just different little things. They ate up all of our strawberries and melons. They promised we could eat up all their grapes and peaches when we came to Virginia. And here they are playing music together and helping them fix each other's. Well, most of the stuff they broke, like the fence, they're fixing that up for them. But none of us thought about Virginia much. We were so busy hugging and eating and breathing together. Finally, after a long time, the relatives loaded up their ice chests and headed back to Virginia at 4 in the morning. We stood there in our pajamas and waved them off in the dark. We watched the relatives disappear down the road. Then we crawled back into our beds that felt too big and too quiet. We fell asleep. And there's shoes in the yard, and the kids are out there, and the little boy's pants is halfway down to his knees. Well, if you could see it. Okay, there. And the relatives drove on all day long and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses in the different mountains. And they thought about their dark purple graves waiting at home in Virginia. But they thought about us too, missing them, and they missed us. And when they finally were home in Virginia, they crawled into their silent, soft beds and dreamed about next summer. And as you can see, the storyteller kind of seemed like she might have exaggerated how much that the two were opposites. And if you looked at the pictures, if you could see them, I know my camera is a little blurry, the families were very much alike, except, I guess they lived in different states, and I think that might have been, considering it was a kid that told the story, I feel like that might have been one of the things that was very different for her, and I feel like that's why she really thought they was different. But I would close the lesson by asking my students, what do you think will happen next summer? What will the relatives bring on their next journey? And will they get to eat all the peaches and the grapes from Virginia when they go to Virginia? And that's how I would close the lesson. Thanks.